folks, welcome back to what is episode number 33 of the ToonTALK podcast brought to you by Magpie 24/7. My name is Ian and I am joined today by Kyle. How are you doing?
I've been better, Ian. I'm not going to lie to you. Especially after yesterday and this season unfolding to be an absolute waste of time. But yeah, I've been better. It's always good to talk to you, mate. But yeah, I mean, in terms of Newcastle, I mean, it's a hard one to record this one.
Absolutely. I mean, likewise, I do enjoy our football chats as well, but unfortunately, there isn't much positive news to be talking about when it comes to Newcastle United. I mean, I suggest we just get straight into the game. Pull the plaster off as quickly as possible. For anyone who didn't see it yesterday, Newcastle United took on Bournemouth at St. James's Park, a 3 o'clock kickoff, in which, I mean, it feels at this point like a broken record, but we were hoping for a reaction. I think a lot of people kind of already made peace with the fact that Eddie's side usually don't do well against Bournemouth, so this might be a lot of the same, and a lot of the same it ended up being. A 2-1 win for Bournemouth, which means we've lost our third league game in a row now. Europe is starting to look really unlikely. Before we get into specifics, what was your general feeling? Maybe firstly going into St. James's Park.
To be honest, Ian, I expected to get beat yesterday. We'll run against Bournemouth as speaks for itself. I mean, we're terrible against them. Even when we were all okay, we couldn't seem to get the better of Bournemouth or Areola in the other dugout. So yeah, just pure pessimism going into the game yesterday. I just thought like, well, you've had your chance really to respond, and you've had your chance to like show there's something there, but didn't see it. Again, like over the course of the season, like after Barcelona, they had a chance to respond perfectly in the derby, and they play like that. Then they have 3 weeks to go on the training ground. One of the big things that's been argued for Eddie Howe, that he just needs time on the training pitch with the players and will improve. Ever since then, we've got worse. We lost to a Crystal Palace team that didn't even weren't even focusing on us, to drop the 3 best players. That just played a couple of days before in the Europa Conference League, and we do what we usually do and lose the lead and then lose the game. And then you have another week, no midweek games this time, more time on the training pitch, and they played like that yesterday. So this response thing, like I feel like I feel like it's done. Like there isn't going to be a response, because even if they respond after this, it's like, well, where was that kind of thing, and like yeah, it's going into the game yesterday, and it was just like real pessimism, because I thought like they've kind of missed the boat, and there's just the response is too late, even if it comes.
Hmm. Yeah, I do echo most of what you're saying. I was listening to Pod on the Tyne yesterday, right after the game, and they were talking about St. James's Park being at a knife's edge, especially right after
Yeah.
Evan Nilsson missed the a big chance for Bournemouth to go 2-0 in front right before halftime. I mean, it that ball didn't even go in, but the boos were loud and clear when that chance came for Bournemouth, and
It was.
really from that moment onwards, even when we did equalize, it felt like the nerves at St. James's Park were there, but also just like you were saying, the pessimism, the lack of belief, and that is mostly down to what our fans have seen unfold right in front of their eyes on the pitch this season, hasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it has, and I do echo that with the missed chance from Evan Nielsen early in the first half, because it would have put them 2-0 up, and the performance leading up to that moment was very poor. Like the goal that we conceded was just ridiculous. As Ryan, a player that Eddie Howe didn't want because we've got
Mm-hmm.
Jacob Murphy and he's bearing down on goal. He just plays it across to Evan Nielsen. It's an easy tap in. But how many times have these easy tap ins happened, Ian? Like it's happening so often. Like Brobbery had a tap in, Evan Nielsen had a tap in. Later in the game, Trufford had a tap in.
Absolutely.
Like it's just basic defending, and we just don't seem to grasp the concept. So when that moment happened, all the Gallagher's like just kind of like wake the fuck up. Even Paul got up and was like, "Yeah, what's going on here?" Like, just like we were meant to react 3 weeks ago, and this is like the issue that this is the team that's playing. And like I got the vibe yesterday, like leading up to that moment in particular, where it was just like just kind of the going through the motions, and like they'd rather be anywhere else than playing for Newcastle United. And there was a couple of players that really give it a good go. um like I thought Tonali played well in the midfield, trying to get the ball forward and trying to win the ball back. And Asula, I know me and Paul go back and forth on Asula, but at least he puts himself about and makes a nuisance of himself. And even though he was against two really big centre backs, he really handled himself well and he put himself about and he deserved his goal when it came. But like top to bottom of this team, Ian, too many too many passengers, too many people that are either looking at the summer and looking beyond of the looking into getting into World Cup squads or looking to get moves away. Like
Mm-hmm.
ever since, like I'm just gonna go through top to bottom of the team, Ian, to be honest, because I'm like so annoyed because
Absolutely.
I know
Good idea.
because Eddie Howe gets a lot of the stuff, and I think tactically and stuff like that, there's every right for people to call this out, but these players shouldn't get a free ride either because some of them are just absolutely apparently bad. Like ever since I love Tino Livramento, but ever since we've had a caller from Man City, he hasn't been the same player. Your centre backs, Dan Burn came on late in the game as a fullback. Um, Evan Nielsen, who's nowhere near the height of him and Botman, and he wins the header on for Truffy in the box, in
Mm-hmm.
the 6 yard box. It's just pathetic. Lewis Hall has always been amazing for Newcastle, and it's been consistent. So he does get a free ride on this one because he still gives it and he still is an impact on the game. And you could tell when he went off at half time. Um, yeah, I mean, it's just that's just the defense, mate. And then you can go into the midfield. Ramsey didn't really particularly impact the game yesterday. Tonali, I thought was okay. At least for Truffy's goal, he tried to get in front of the shot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then who else? Miley wasn't particularly great yesterday, but obviously I think with him just come back from injury, and then I'm gonna go onto the wingers here. These wingers are so
Mm-hmm.
bad. Like I've tried with Anthony Alanga all season. I'm like, he'll come good, he'll come good. I don't know what that was yesterday. It was just absolutely terrible. Not tracking your man, going back, going forward, constantly losing the ball. Um, just, just shocking. And
Mm-hmm.
like when we're trying to like get in behind and stuff like that, Alanga's not making those runs. He's got pace to burn. Get in behind, cause problems, make an issue with yourself. But we just seem to be so narrow all the time, and I don't know if that's drilled tactically. I don't know if that's an individual problem, but it seems to be a fundamental issue in this squad where we just don't run in behind. We don't try anything like different. It's just the same shit every game, and we're wondering why we're 14th and like 11 points off the drop. Where if Spurs had a won yesterday, I would have been seriously worried. Like, could these catch way if they go on a run? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and it's unacceptable. Like with the amount that's been spent in the summer and the amount that the squad already had in terms of value and in terms of being united as a front, and the recruitment to go and get Premier League proven in Anthony Alanga, and it just doesn't seem to. I feel from a recruitment side, it hasn't worked. It's not the type of winger that they should have went to go and sign because it doesn't fit the system. And then on the other side, Jacob Murphy, captain last week, by the way. My God, like he's one genuinely, Ian. He's one of the worst footballers I've seen play for this club. Um, I feel like he hides a lot. He doesn't make runs. He just kind of filters in with his fullback. And he didn't start, but when he came on, like massive problems. And then the marking he had for Truffy for the goal, spineless. And like when we had well, last week when Palace had a penalty in the last minute, he's meant to be captain. He's getting told by his teammates to go and deal with the go and plead with the referee to say it's not a penalty, and he wasn't even there, captain. Like it, and then you know what I mean. It's not even just Murphy. Barnes yesterday was absolutely terrible. Like he had a couple of runs and he just did nothing but lose the ball. Weak in possession, easily pushed off the ball, and Asula, who put himself about and trying to make it work, was let down by his wingers today. Well, yesterday, and I just feel like top to bottom, like there's just so many issues in the team. Substitutions not working out, and like it's so frustrating to watch. Like we are like there's a group of teams between fifth and 14th that could get Europe or whatever. We're the worst of that lot by some considerable margin, and I think I've seen a stat in where since we played Wolves, bottom of the league, we have the same amount of points as them in the league. Since we played Wolves, and that was a boring 0-0 draw.
Yeah.
So what does that say for this team? Like some of them seem to be on the beach. Some of them can't be arsed. Some of them don't even turn up to play. Like Eddie Howe said in his press conference about Anthony Gordon, um, being like, well, not Anthony Gordon, personally, but he said players that don't want to be here won't be featured. And then the day after, Anthony Gordon's not in the squad with a hip flexor injury. Like it just seems like there's loads going on behind the scenes, and it seems to be a mess, like an absolute mess. The only positives I can give you yesterday, and I try and be positive, and I try and be like happy about the City, was the only positive I can give you is Bruno is back, and within 10 minutes he got an assist.
Yeah.
Um, and that's literally it, mate. Like hopefully Bruno can get with like a win or two before the end of the season, but like even after we got beat off Sunderland and like we're talking about the big run in and stuff, because Eddie was like, because Dave Hopkins said like, look, we can still make Europe. It depends what competitions we're going to be in next season and stuff. We're not going to be in any European competition, mate, and it's just as well because you're just kicking the can down the road. Like this squad, this management at the moment cannot handle the European stuff, and at the minute, since we've been kicked out of Europe, the argument's been, oh well, with no Europe, we tend to pick up. We've got worse, and it's
Yeah.
just like it's a fundamental problem among so many areas. Like I know people are quick to blame the manager, and the manager this season hasn't been great at all. Like tactically, I think he's been so stubborn to a point where it's just absolutely ridiculous that he won't change anything. However, he has a system in place that has worked in the past, and he's put players in, and these players aren't delivering for him either. So I think this summer coming up for Newcastle Ian's huge, absolutely huge, because if they mess it up, Ross Wilson, David Hopkinson, Suds as well, if they fuck this up in the summer, that's where we're going to be in for the next couple of seasons, 10th to 14th. Like this summer is so huge with SCR coming in and with the rebuild that's needed, because I think out of the team, out of the whole Premier League squad, you're looking at about 8 to 10 that need to go, and you're looking at around the same amount that need to come in to try and revitalise this squad. And there is arguments over the manager, back and forth. I think publicly, I wouldn't want to hound Eddie out or anything like that. I feel like with what he's done for, he's earned the respect from a lot of fans. To say like he's commanded that respect and not get hounded out like that. But something does need to change here, and I don't know if it's a overhaul in the playing squad or if they're looking towards the manager as well, and potentially just starting from scratch next season. But something fundamentally needs to change, because this season, or in a couple of moments and a couple of good wins at home in the Champions League, this this season's been absolutely horrible. Like it has top to bottom awful. In the league, I can only think of one or two good moments where Sula scored against Man United and Barnes
Mm.
against Leeds,
Yeah.
and literally, like that's in terms of the league. That's all I can think of. We've lost twice to Sunderland this season. We're in the bottom half. We're closer to the relegation zone than more the top four. Signings that have came in, big money signings haven't worked at all. Um, some signings made without a great deal of thought from recruitment, like Walter Mara, for example, who's a great technical player, but you've tried to play him as like he's Andy Carroll, as an example. Um, yeah, from top to bottom, Ian, it's just been a collective mess from the
Mm.
club, and it's a huge summer to try and fix that.
Absolutely. I think, firstly, on the starting 11, um, I mean, I don't think you said anything with which I don't agree. Um, Ramsdale was in goal. Chow and Botman were the centre backs. Botman, who I thought did actually have a pretty good game, because there's one or two opportunities for Bournemouth where an attacker came through and Botman was the only one who was able to defend it. But again, in the last minutes, he switches off. Him and Dan Burn lose an aerial duel against Evan Nilsson, like you said, something that should never happen in a million years, let alone in your own 16-yard area. So that's where we concede the goal. The first goal Bournemouth score as well. Both our fullbacks are in fault for that one, because, as you say, Ryan is bombing through towards the touchline, and Lewis Hall just kind of lets him go. And the really strange thing is that throughout the first half, Eddie Howe and Jason Tyndall were screaming their lungs out at Lewis Hall about his defensive positioning, and he was almost ignoring them, which is another damning indictment in and of itself. It's like you say, a lot of these players, I'm starting to doubt the commitment they show towards the Newcastle United badge. For Lewis Hall, now that's really harsh, because I think he has had a brilliant season, and I think this is the only game where maybe his commitment can be questioned, and maybe he's just a bit in his own head with our recent performances. But Livramento, for example, you said it perfectly. Ever since Manchester City called him, but especially since he's been back from his most recent injury, he has been horrible. He's let players run past him, not marking them near the second post, for a very very easy back post finish for all of those attacking players. He's not marking them. He's not showing the same attacking intent either, and to me that just shows like that looks like a player who is more worried about keeping himself fit with a World Cup coming up than he is about draining his shirt in sweat to get those European tickets. So I think Tino Livramento is mentally already checked out of Newcastle United and ready to move on. Might be harsh. I don't know the lad personally, but that's the feeling I'm getting when I see him play at this moment in time. So I think whenever any team offers us 45, 50 million or more for the Livramento, I think we absolutely should be taking that, especially given his injury record. Now, the midfield. I thought Ramsey had a difficult game compared to his most recent weeks, especially before the international period. I thought he was having some good performances, none of that yesterday. Tonali, I did think was pretty good as well. Eddie Howe tried him in a number 8 role, which never really has worked for us in the past. He's more of a deep lying playmaker for us. But even then, he got himself about really nicely. And one other thing as well, he was wearing the captain's armband, despite not being in the traditional leadership group of our players. That was something really significant to me as well. None of our designated leaders were in the starting 11 yesterday. And that also made for our starting 11 yesterday being the youngest it's ever been for about 25 years. So when stats like that happen, when you see a team go in transition, because young teams usually are in transition, you want to be looking for the positives. And to me, Osula was a positive. He gets himself about pretty nicely, shows he's a real threat physically, and really wants to score, really wants to perform. Louis Miley, I thought he was actually pretty good. I think he has had better games for us this season, but having someone in the midfield who won't lose possession in dangerous areas, who takes care of the ball so nicely like he does, and who actually makes us take over pretty fast is really good. I think we always look a way better outfit when Miley is in midfield than when he isn't, so I'm glad he's back. And yeah, like you said, Bruno is also back, and the way he came onto the pitch just absolutely changed everything. The way he, first of all, demands the ball. That's something I've seen lacking in this team for about 4 to 5 months now. Just players demanding to get the ball in the middle of the park and taking responsibility to get the ball forward. There's none of that. Every other player is looking at each other's teammates, is nearly pointing fingers at each other. That was something that I really did notice against Crystal Palace, that there was finger pointing against other teammates. And Bruno has just none of that. He runs towards the back line, picks up the ball, turns a 180 immediately, because all he is thinking about is get this ball up the pitch as quickly as possible and let's get attacking. And it almost felt like for the first it felt like Newcastle United had been on a smoking bender for like 4 to 5 weeks, and for the first time in those weeks they actually had the chance to breathe some fresh air when Bruno came onto the pitch. That's genuinely what it felt like to me. And we just cannot be that reliant on one single player. Harvey Barnes completely um, mentally got taken out of the game by Jimenez at Bournemouth, because he said one or two things at him when he tackled him, and from that point onwards, Harvey Barnes was just absolutely in his own head. And Anthony Elanga, I mean, I think you've covered it basically entirely perfectly when it comes to Elanga, because I don't really have anything else to add on him that isn't negative, so I'm just going to leave it there in terms of Anthony
Yeah.
Elanga. I suggest.
There's a player in there, mate. I just don't feel like it's working in
Mhm,
this current thing.
absolutely.
Maybe like if the club were to go in a different direction in terms of the management, I think people
Hmm.
should give Alanga another chance. But I think if Eddie Howe does stay beyond the summer, which I don't know if that's the case or not, but if that does happen, then I just don't see Alanga becoming the player he was at Nottingham Forest under Eddie Howe. I just don't see it.
Me neither, to be honest. I think Elanga also just completely. The thing is, he is a good player. He is a very physically gifted athlete, but he's a decent player. But the thing is, he would be so brilliant for a team like Nottingham Forest again, a team who have to defend most of the game and have to have their attacking opportunities from those quick transitions, from going deep and immediately having to pretty much cover 50 to 60 meters of the pitch. That's where Elanga shines most, but you'll almost never be in that situation when you're in a Newcastle United shirt, because firstly, when we did do that, we were pretty effective at the start of Eddie's tenure, meaning teams have adapted to that, teams see that coming when they are playing Newcastle United, but also when you have been in the Champions League for 2 seasons now, you're expected against lower opposition to be making the opportunities, to be the attacking side, to genuinely, yeah, break down a D block. And you can't break down a D block with players who want to be playing in a D block themselves. That's just a really difficult thing. So I think we need more composure on the ball. I think we need more tempo setters on the ball, and most of all, I think we need more intricate passers in this team. So maybe I mean, if at some point, probably not next summer, but the summer after, Jacob Murphy leaves, then I think it's we're back to it being perfectly feasible to keep Anthony Elanga, because if you're in a 1 or 2 goal lead, he is actually a really effective winger to bring on to help defend and just send through on the counter attack whenever possible to try and extend your lead. But for the phase in which we are now, I completely agree. He's just not good enough. Before we get into anything else, I suggest we listen to what Paul's thoughts were on the starting lineup against Bournemouth, and then afterwards also what his final reaction was after the game.
Half time, shocker rate, we're behind. Deserve to be so, to be honest. I don't know whatever changes they're currently making right now, whatever discussions are going on right now, but basically, show me the total opposite of what you did in the first half needs to be on the list. Absolutely gutless, pathetic, inept, boring performance. If this is the response of the response of the response, then the response is very good, Kyle.
Yeah, mate, it's not good, is it? I mean, it's hard to put into words kind of how I'm feeling at the minute. Like, on the ball in possession, we'll look out of ideas. Out of possession, we'll look so easy to play through. Their goal comes from Ryan, plays it into the middle for Tavernier.
Not good enough.
It's funny that Ryan was seen as not good enough in January, but Tavernier so he's after in the summer. So, but yeah, it's a bitter pill to swallow with all this. This season's been absolutely shocking. It's been a frustrating season. They had a chance to turn it around after the defeat against Barcelona and kick in the gear against Sunderland. They played like they did. They're 3 weeks out to recharge the batteries and get about it. They serve up that against Crystal Palace. People are frustrated, angry, and they had a chance to try and start putting things right today, and that's the way they're playing, man. They look devoid of any care. Looks like they're on the beach. The last time Newcastle were like on the beach like this was when in our last full season under Steve Bruce, where 7-8 games to go, we just didn't look interested. The players have the same kind of vibe now. It just looks finished. It really does. I really want this season to end, Paul. I'm really frustrated with the team. I'm frustrated with everything. I just want this season to fucking end.
I hope you heard us over Justin Lockwood and his dubfit tones. Honestly, second half, I mean, the only thing I can say is it can't get much more worse. But just lads, show a bit of spine, show some guts, show a bit of nerves, get the ball, get it crossed in, work it in, and shoot! Fuck's sake, not asking much. Well, we've gone from Champions League to Champions League because we played like a bunch of naive, uninterested, bored, on the beach, lazy bastards. We got in that match exactly what we deserved, and that was completely and utterly fuck all. So many players out of form. It brings Voldemar on with minutes to go. I mean, what's the point? Vista doesn't even... Hey, God, where do you start with that? Absolutely good. This season cannot finish soon enough because we will continue to lose matches after matches after matches because we're far too easy, we're predictable. The changes are all very samey. Same time, same players. We keep the same formation, and the definition of insanity is to repeat the same thing and expect a different outcome. Atmosphere inside the stadium today was very, very down. There was lots of chances before the match started, and for the first 10 minutes Eddie Howe was back in white army, but that stopped, and a growing sense of frustration grew amongst the fans. The players, the worst thing about today, the players just didn't look arsed. They didn't look as if they were arsed one little bit. It's the hope that catcher, isn't it? It really, really is. But look, under Bruce and stuff, we knew we were shit, so you sort of accepted it. Anything else above that was a bonus, but these players are far from shit. But skill and so on, without the work ethic, gets you absolutely and totally fuck all at the end of the day. And that's what we're getting at the moment. Arsenal next, so nothing from there. As far as I know, Leeds were winning and closing the gap yet further. And I'm just glad that I think we've enough distance between us and the relegation zone. But it's squeaky bum time, and if this drop off had started a little bit sooner, we'd be in real danger. If there was more of the season left, we'd be in real danger. But the person who, well, could be in real danger is the manager. Just devoid of any sort of confidence, everything he says doesn't seem to have any effect on the players at all, not one little bit. The players literally look as if, I can't be asked. Some of them are away and they know they're away. Some of them are wanting to be away. Some of them think, I'm not going to be here next season, so what's the point? It's disgraceful. Another packed house, despite the results, despite the performances, despite the slide down the table. And they just can't. They can't do it. They just can't or won't do it. Substitutions reactive rather than proactive again. No real change in formation when it matters. Aimless balls, misplacements all the time. And for the love of fucking Christ, will somebody tell them just to please cross the fucking ball in, work the opposition keeper? I said to Kyle inside the ground, this is like a T-Rex up against Barney the dinosaur. But it turns out we're Barney the fucking dinosaur and they're the T-Rex. It shouldn't be like that. Bournemouth are not a hotbed. Look, nothing against Bournemouth, nothing but respect for the fans. No beef, no issues. The better team won, most definitely. But in terms of football club, this is a monster. And that's something that should be appearing on CBeebies. The gulf should be that wide. I've stuck up for Eddie Howe time and time and time again, but he's not giving you any sort of clear evidence that he's ready to turn a corner, that there's brighter times ahead. I was starting to say before, like I say, under Bruce, you knew you were shit and you sort of accepted that. But I don't think that's the case with this team, with this squad, with the money that's been spent on it. And we're just literally dropping like a stone. Down the league we go, down the league we go. The only sort of moment of any sort of quality and we score a goal. Bruno, the one light, the one inspiration. But, which one of our better players is going to want to sit around if this is what we're going to be doing again next season? There has to be a line in the sand. I really hope that there is. I'm gutted. I'm down. I'm disappointed. Over a 3-hour journey. 60-odd quid worth of fuel gone in today. And when the people come into the ground are showing more effort and commitment than what the players are doing, it's a sorry state of affairs. It really is. Newcastle United, deservedly, comprehensively, rightfully beaten in their own backyard. And we've gone down with a complete and utter whimper. Tuning in at the same bat time and at the same bat location for some more absolute shit show. This season cannot finish soon enough. I'm sorry to say. Back over to Kyle and your host Ian for the rest of the podcast. And we go again next weekend. Happy days, eh?
And then I think we can get into a pretty big talking point. I mean, before we do so, is there anything else you would like to add on this performance? I mean, you did mention Anthony Gordon. What do you think? Was it a hip injury or is it the Byron talks?
I think it's the latter, mate. To be honest with you, I don't see it. I think with Anthony Gordon, I think like I've had weird, like with how I felt towards Anthony Gordon. It changed a lot when he went down. What seemed to be he didn't want it against Man City when we were 3-0 down in the semi-final. At the Eddie had, and it just came across to me that he just kind of didn't want to be there. And since then, like his mentality for me has been really questioned, and like for me, I think he's probably picked up a little knock in training for sure, but he's got one eye on the World Cup and one eye on the Champions, well, not the Champions League, but on one eye on Bayern Munich as well. And I think like going into the summer, it's going to be to be honest, I think Anthony Gordon's going to be one of the first ones away. I think he'll be away straight away. I just don't see him sticking around. I think he'll be one of the big players that Newcastle let go this summer, and I think it's one of 2 or 3 that are going to leave. With we're missing out on European football, but I think it's going to give her a chance to start again. in many aspects, and Gordon's probably looking at his next move now, and he's had a good return in the Champions League this season, so I think he's done enough to say, oh well, I can get a move based on this. I think there is still a lot of question marks for me. Like, I think it's 3 goals in open play in the league since the back end of the start of last season, or something like that. Maybe the start of this season, where open play goals is like few and far between for Anthony Gordon, and he just doesn't seem to get up for the games against, like, your Bournemouths, for example, or your Brightons, or the teams in the middle of the pack or at the bottom. Gordon just doesn't seem to perform. Like, you look at the Crystal Palace game last week, he was so bad. Like, he was ridiculously bad. And I think there is a mentality issue there, because when we've got the Champions League or when we've got a big game, Anthony Gordon's way up for them games, and he plays really well, and he's a massive threat for Newcastle in those games. But in the games where I feel like he could be the difference maker for Newcastle, and the big change of us winning a game and us not winning a game, I feel like he's just not there, or he's not interested. And I feel like there's a lot of games this season where he hasn't been up for it. And that's not just him, by the way. That's a collective. There's a lot of players that I feel that way about. But I think with Gordon, I think he will be away. And yeah, I think it's one of them where we need to replace him. But, like, I mean, I don't dislike, or I don't dislike Anthony Gordon. Like, if he goes to Bayern Munich, I'll wish him well and see how he does. But, like, yeah, it seems to be a mentality issue across the team. And I think Anthony Gordon is one of the players in the group that I feel like has eyes on other places, not trying to get Newcastle into Europe.
Spot on, I think. Especially about the part that if Anthony Gordon was to go, I don't think there would be too many hard feelings towards him. Yes, unfortunately, it's never nice to see one of your better players go to a different club. But I actually do think this would be a pretty good sell by Newcastle United as well. Selling him to a team which is not a direct Premier League rival in Bayern Munich, I think he would be absolutely fantastic in Bavaria, to be honest, because in the Bundesliga, attackers get a lot, but I genuinely do mean a lot more space than they get in the Premier League. So Anthony Gordon, I think, will thrive off of that. And also just, I mean, being able to provide for Harry Kane will suit him pretty well, probably.
Yeah.
So in those terms, or in regards to that transfer, I completely understand why Anthony Gordon would be willing to move. And if the 80 million reported price tag is met, I think that's a pretty fair price for Anthony Gordon as well on our behalf. So that's good business. You said it yourself, 2 to 3 players though might be sold this summer. I did a stay or go on the channel as well. If you haven't seen that yet, please make sure to go and check it out. But what other player or players would you be open to selling if you were the Newcastle United board? Keeping in mind that the likes of Kieran Trippier are already off in the summer.
Yeah, like, in terms of how I feel on this one, it is literally like it's gonna be 2 or 3 of the big players that are in our team. With Gordon, I think he'll be one of them. I think Toon will be another. And then maybe a third one. You're probably looking at maybe like Walter or something. I think if Eddie is in charge next season, which is up in the air, it's up for debate. But if Eddie Howe's in charge next season, I don't think Walter will be at Newcastle. And then I think you're probably looking at maybe a Tonali. But with Tonali made captain yesterday, like, I'm not sure, like, if he's in the leadership group and stuff. He's mentioned publicly that if he's in the leadership group and he's a leader here, that doesn't scream to me he wants away. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know his agent sounded out a couple of things, but for me, that would seem like he could be convinced to stay. So my feelings on Tonali's changed in terms of whether he's going or not in recent days. But yeah, I feel like there is a couple of big names that are going to leave this summer. But in all honesty, Ian, I think with Gordon and Tino, with the current state with the Premier League, with needing to sell your players and stuff like that, we need to develop a situation where we sell players at the right time, because there's been situations in the past where we haven't. like Miggy Almiron, for example, or like Kieran Trippier when a bid from Bayern Munich ironically came in for him and we turned it down, or Joe Willock, or
Even Alexander
whoever,
Isak,
right?
if we sold him a
Yeah,
month
yeah,
sooner, we'd have, first of all, we've probably signed Hugo Ekitike instead of Nick Voltemade, but we would have had 3 to 4 weeks to ease down the pressure and take our time to think about the transfers we were making. Instead, we paid
that's
55
it.
million for Wisa.
Yeah, exactly. So there is such thing as selling players at the right time, and I think in Gordon's career, I think it is the right time for him to move on. Because I feel like business wise, next season we wouldn't get the price that's been spoken about next season if he has a season in the Premier League where he struggles a little bit and he has 3 open play goals in a season, for example. Like Newcastle can use his performance in the Champions League as kind of a sell-on point and be like, look, this
Exactly.
is the big game player that you need and stuff. So I think the right time to sell him's now, and Tino might be the same, but for different reasons. So I think Tino's only played like what 15 games or 15, 18
Yeah,
games this season, and we've played the most games in Europe of anybody. So if there's a big price tag coming in for Tino, maybe look at that. But like Tino's a good player. I do question how he's played since Man City came calling, but on his day, like Tino's a fantastic right back. But like I think from a business side, Paul's mentioned it on the podcast as well, where you're not needing to be too sentimental with certain players, and I do agree with that a lot. Like with certain players, there is a right time to sell them. I feel like business wise, Newcastle have been really short on selling players at the right time, and we need to start doing that. I feel like the only person in the last few years we've sold correctly and made a good business move of them was Lloyd Kelly at Juventus for 20
yeah,
million.
that's
Um,
exactly right. Yeah,
and that's literally the only one. There's others where we've sold them, and we've sold them either too late or we've sold them beneath the valuation that we were worth because we weren't willing to sell them at the time that they needed to be sold. Like for example, if they'd have sold Jacob Murphy last season, some idiot would have paid 30 million for him. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
um,
Liverpool probably would have.
so yeah. So it's literally a case of learning to sell people at the right time, and there is a couple of players in that squad where their career trajectory it's kind of not at Newcastle anymore. So we need to see that and be like, look, the time to move a couple of these players on is now. And the two that I would highlight is probably Gordon and Tino. But if Tonali can be convinced, then great. But if he can't, then moving him on as well as quickly as possible and not dragging it over the summer
Yes.
like it happened with Isak last summer.
That is to me the most important part of whoever we sell this summer, to not let it drag on, to have the sale done, dusted as soon as possible, so that you can go after replacements. Because clubs know whenever you've sold a player for big money, you have that money. So clubs will be demanding more for the players you're trying to sign. So the ideal way to go about it is probably to agree the deals for the players you want to sign right before you sell the players you already have. Unfortunately, this is still football business, so that's not always as easy to do. I understand. So if let's say for example, you sell Gordon for 80 million and you sell Livramento for 50 million, that is 130 million. I know it doesn't necessarily translate as one on one as I'm going to do right now, but for the purposes of this argument, it does now. So 130
Yeah.
million, that is then your budget. And in my eyes, 130 million should be more than enough to sign either one wing. So Anthony Gordon is one winger who is in my eyes completely the same profile as all four of our other wingers, with the exception that on the right we don't have players who are comfortable cutting in, and on the left we do. So sign two wingers who are completely different profiles, in my opinion. One of those wingers, in my opinion, doesn't even have to be fast, because that would also force us to try different ways of attacking if we have players with other capabilities and other limitations. But also sign a winger with the left foot. Sign a winger who is more creative than someone who actually tries to score for himself. Try and sign even a winger who drifts into midfield instead of a winger who drifts into the middle of attack. For Tino Livramento, if you sell him, you're probably going to have to sign two right backs because Kieran Trippier is also leaving. But sign someone who can function as a right wing back, and someone who can function as both a right back and a center back. So you can switch up between having to defend the lead or actually having to bring someone on who is position for position, but profile wise does give you a bit more of an attacking edge. That is, to me, the biggest thing by far that lacks in the entirety of our squad is differentiation in between the profiles. Even last summer, we bought Wissa with the idea of him being the same profile as Alexander Isak was, so we didn't have to change style. Anthony Elanga was brought in as a younger version of Jacob Murphy. Jacob Ramsey was brought in as a less injury-prone version of Joe Willock. You see what I'm talking about? We could go on and on about this, and it's just because Eddie Howe has decided my left back needs to be this profile and my left winger needs to be this profile. And Eddie has clearly failed to find some answers and solutions for some pretty obvious problems this season, and I'm not saying I would have found those solutions, but what I am saying is maybe someone else will. I have been Eddie in on this podcast for the entire season up to this point. I am starting to be Eddie question mark. I won't say Eddie out just yet, but I am starting to think if Ross Wilson and Hopkinson get the summer absolutely spot on and do bring in these different profiles, is Eddie Howe going to be willing to change up his style of play and utilize these different profiles enough? That is a worry to me. What do you think?
I think in terms of the style and stuff, mate, with Eddie Howe, it is very much Eddie's style. I don't see him changing it. I feel like if he was going to, he would have changed it this season at some point, but he hasn't. I think, as I mentioned earlier, like it is stubborn to a point of like ridiculousness, which is where tactical problems have surfaced, where teams can play through it because we play a certain way, and we've basically, to cut a long story short, we've been found out. Eddie's been found out with this Newcastle team. There's a way to play Newcastle, and we've tried to transition slowly into being more of a possession-based football team, but with the profiles that you've mentioned, Ian, of players coming in, there have to be a particular style, and changing over to a different style slowly, transition to a possession-based side where we are trying to keep the ball and trying to get in behind, but going forward and having possession against low block teams, we have no idea how to play against it. In terms of going forward, there's not really repetition and patterns of play. In terms of when we get to the byline to cross the ball, I've said it to Paul numerous times this season, but I don't feel like we do crossing in training. The amount of players that just overhit crosses, I feel like that's why Jacob Murphy still gets a place in the team, because he's only one with natural crossing ability in the team, which is fucking scary, by the way. If Jacob Murphy has standout attributes in your wingers, but like you know what I mean. It's we're trying to play a different way, but we've stuck with the same styles that kind of go with the older way of playing. I prefer the way Eddie used to play, where we press teams high, we win the ball high up the field, and that's how we used to score goals. But we don't press teams high up the field anymore, so we don't win the ball in their half, and we just kind of sit back in this 5-4-1 shape, where the gap between the midfield and the defence is just so big, it's unbelievable. And we just kind of sit in that, and we don't win the ball back, and we're kind of looking at technical ability to get up the field, and we're just don't have that. So like our proactivity to try and win the ball back while the opposition's starting moves and stuff like that, it doesn't happen anymore. And I don't know why. We seem to be in kind of a middle trance where like we want to be this possession based team where we maintain the possession and then push high up, but in the thingy of that, we've kind of done a middle ground where we do neither of those things. So we'll kind of push to press, but we'll also kind of maintain that position of formation solidity as well, where we'll just kind of do neither of those things. So we're high up to a point where teams can just play through it. So we're not pressing them and putting pressure on their defence, but we're also just maintaining the solidity of the team on the pitch, and we're just getting played through every time. So we're doing neither off the ball of what Eddie has tried to coach what to do. It just seems to be a middle ground of, oh, well, we're kind of pressing, but we're kind of not, and it's just equal, and we're doing nothing in possession or out of possession. When we're in possession, we're getting to a low block and we'll kind of do anything. We'll cross the ball way too long after we should have. It's overhit. It's not on. It's not on the point. You seem to cross the ball when Walter off the pitch, and then when he's on, you don't. Like I say, so many fundamental issues in this team. I don't know if it's down to, well, it is down to coaching. It's down to the recruitment. It's down to the profiles that the team are bringing in, and it's just like there's so many fundamental issues at this team, and I feel like I say, this summer is a huge one. So you need to identify profiles that are going to come in and make it different. I don't know if you identify another manager. There is a lot of question marks over that, Ian, with how fans feel. And I feel like fans who are angry at the situation, or angry with Eddie Howe and the management team, have every right to be. This season's been absolutely terrible, as I mentioned at the top of the podcast there. Like, the response of the response of the response, and there's still no response. Like, the games we've lost at home just this year. I'm not going over the whole season. Just this year, lost to Everton at home. We've lost to Brentford at home. We've lost to Sunderland at home, and now we've lost to Bournemouth at home as well. And that's just at home. That's not going off the Crystal Palace game last week or
Our
whatever it
honking
may
away
be.
record
But
in general.
yeah, exactly. It's the inability to hold on to a lead. 25 points dropped, man. Like, that is awful. But
Yeah.
watching where you can see why that's happening, and there's just fundamental problems across the board, and it might take more than one summer to fix a lot of those problems, but it depends. It depends which way the club want to go. If they want a total refresh of the team and playing style and stuff, if they want a different playing style and they want a different stuff, they need to move the manager on, because Eddie won't change his style. If they want to stick with Eddie and stuff like that, okay, but they're gonna have to sit Eddie down and be like, look, recruitment needs to change, because if recruitment doesn't change, we're going to be bringing in James Garner from Everton, probably Marcus Tavernier in the summer, and then Liam Delap. We'll probably spend 150 million on those three players, and then we'll be kicking the can down the road and having the same problems next season. Either we need to overvamp the recruitment where Eddie doesn't have as much power and we can bring in these profiles for Ross Wilson, or we need to look in a different direction with the management. And it is literally one of those things. I think recruitment needs looked at anyway, but it's for me, it's one of them needs to happen. If you're gonna back Eddie, then back Eddie. But you need to say like, look, it needs to be a more of a cohesive approach with recruitment and who we bring in, because we need to be smarter. Like the players that were brought in last summer, barring Malik Chow, I'd probably go as far as saying it's the worst summer window Newcastle have ever had. With some of the players that they've brought in, even the good players that we've brought in, Ian, don't fit the system. Like, there's a player in Alanga, there's definitely a player in Walter Mara, there's a player there in Jacob Ramsey, but I feel like recruitment wise, could they have went into Europe and found a midfielder a lot cheaper who could do the same kind of role. Like, I just feel like top to bottom there is a fundamental problem, and one of the two extremes need to happen. It's as simple as that, really. Like, in terms of fan opinion and stuff like that, like, if you're just a football club for a minute and you cut out the noise, one of those needs to happen if you want to drive forward. Because at the minute, I think a lot of outside Newcastle fans are kind of looking at us and being like, "Oh, where's this project Mbappe and all these players since you take over and stuff?" Like, we're being looked at, and I think we're under the microscope now of whether we're going to kick on and become one of the top teams in the league, or we're just going to kind of fizzle out into mediocrity like we were before the takeover. Like, I cannot tell you enough how big this summer is for Newcastle. If they do nothing and they stay the same, lack of European football won't fix the problem. Like, a lot of people think, oh, Eddie Howe, with no Europe, we'll get Europe again next season. You're just kicking the can down the road.
Absolutely.
Like, if we do nothing, Eddie Howe remains in charge next season with the current recruitment in play, then you're just kicking the can down the road. Because if we do make Europe again, I don't think we would, but if we did, you face the same problems we've had this very season, where you kind of compete on both fronts, and we look fatigued, and we look this, and we look that, and you're just kicking the can down the road. So I feel like whether it's the recruitment kind of thing, they go down where they fix that, try and bring players in for better value, looking into the market abroad and stuff like that, or changing management and the recruitment changes because of the different type of profile the manager wants. It's one of those two, Ian, for me. Like publicly, I won't sit and hound Eddie Howe out, because what he's done at the end of the day, he gives the best day of my life on the 16th of March 2025, with the Carabao Cup final that we won. He's done so many great things for this club, whether that be getting into the Champions League twice, or some of the great nights we've had at St James's Park, the PSG night. Like, he's give us so much good. It is bad at the moment, but stuff with Eddie Howe, like, he has give us so much good in his time here, and he's probably one of my favourite Newcastle managers of all time. Just at the minute, there is a fundamental problem in the team, that it seems like to me that the players don't play for him as such. Whether that be because they're against the manager or they have eyes on other things, it's probably the latter, in my opinion. But yeah, I feel like for me, being one of those extremes needs to happen if they're gonna progress forward.
I mean, a lot to digest there, but I think you've actually absolutely hit the nail on the head there, especially when we're talking about those playing styles. So you're spot on for me. It is a real big struggle this season that Eddie Howe has seemed to want to transition to a more possession style without actually committing to transitioning to that possession style, which means we're neither.
Yeah.
Now it is up to probably our board to decide what's Newcastle going to be, at least for the next 10 years. What is the play style of Newcastle United going to be, and we need to stick within that. Why do I say that? Well, I've seen in our group chat, but also online, people linking us and wanting us to bring in Jose Mourinho, Diego Simeone. And if we do that, then we're going to be next season's Tottenham Hotspur. Because that is exactly what they have done. They have switched from an attacking-minded coach to a defensive-minded coach to a possession coach, consistently switching, chopping and changing coaches. Manchester United, exactly the same story. But they have a very, very big, not necessarily incentive to do so, but more leeway and wiggle room to do so, because they can't get as financially punished as we did last summer. Last summer's decision making in terms of transfers is going to hurt us for the next 2 to 3 summer transfer windows, probably, especially transfers like Yohan Wissa, because that's a player without any resale value. We've paid £55 million for, and we've lost one of the probably 3 seasons we were going to get out of him. So that is a real just drain for our money. Now, again, our board does need to decide then, this is going to be the playing style, and whether we stick with Eddie or we twist. If we twist, we choose a manager that also fits this style of play and this profile. Doesn't necessarily have to fit it one-on-one, but at least be in the same ballpark, so you don't have to rebuild your squad from zero. Because, I agree, we are already going to have a lot of work, a lot of rebuilding work in the summer on this squad. if you then bring in a manager with completely different ideas and philosophies on how to play the game, then you might as well sack everyone at the club and start from scratch in League Two, because you're starting from zero. It's not a healthy way to run this club. One really damning indictment for me on Eddie Howe yesterday was the contrast between Newcastle United and what a actually really well drilled and good coach team in Bournemouth looked like. Because Bournemouth schooled us in that department. They absolutely did. In every single position on the pitch, apart from striker, in my opinion, we had a more talented player than Bournemouth. I think Eli Krupi Jr. is the only player who walks into our team. Still, defensively, they were way more organized than we were. In attack, their patterns of play, their positions were so much more thought out. They were so much more meticulously planned, but most of all, the players knew exactly where Andoni Iraola wants them to be running, playing, where he wants those passes to go, where and at what exact times. And to me, the thing I noticed most of all when we're talking about a better coach team was that for the first 10 minutes, our midfield was really, really dominant. When we got the ball into the middle of our park, we looked like we could actually take this game by the scruff of the neck and control it with Louis Miley and Tonali. Bournemouth fixed that themselves. Andoni Iraola didn't even need to bring on a new player to fix it. Those players recognized in-game what was the problem, and before the 15-minute mark, they had fixed it already. And we, from that moment onwards, even despite us the fact that we did score in the second half through a bit of inspiration from Bruno and William Osula, we did not look like we could lay a glove on Bournemouth from that point onwards. And that is just the signs of a team who do play for their manager, don't have a World Cup on the brain, but also just have a tactical setup that works, in which they trust, and they absolutely, all 11 players on the pitch, carried out that tactical instruction to a T, and they have been doing so all season, which is why they are now set in 8th, and we are still set in 14th. So that to me is really, really damning. And again, we've seen Eddie Howe be better prepared for games and have better tactical ideas than we've seen this season, so I'm not one to write him off, and I don't want to write him off. But I do think maybe these players just need a fresh voice in the dressing room. Maybe he is actually telling them where they need to be running and where they need to be, but because they've been hearing it from the same people for the last 5 years, because it's not just Eddie Howe, it's his coaching staff, which he takes everywhere as well. It's always the same voices, the same opinions, the same instructions. I think at a certain point, it just goes out in one ear and comes out of the other for the players. And that could be a real big problem as well. Because I'm not one to doubt Eddie Howe's quality as a coach. I genuinely believe he could go down in history as the single best English manager of all time. But it's just whether or not this is the time for Newcastle United and Eddie, where it makes most sense for them to split up. And maybe, yeah, I mean, I'm 60-40 on whether or not Eddie needs to go, and unfortunately the 60 part is in he has to go for me.
Yeah, it is quite a sad situation, Ian, because at the end of the day, like, it shouldn't be this way with Eddie Howe, like, with how it went with the Carabao Cup and stuff like that. I feel like if at the end of last season, if he had just went to England, and instead of Thomas Tuchel, I feel like that would have been like the perfect way to end the Cinderella story, really. And it's kind of dragged on, and there is a lot of questions over the management this season, and rightly so. By the way, there's a lot of issues with mentality when we're in the lead, mentality when we're not in the lead, and I think it comes to your point yesterday, just there before. Like, how many times has that happened though, where teams have came here to St James's Park and they've been tactically superior? And we're not talking about like Hansi Flick, or even though Hansi Flick has came to St James's Park this season and done a tactical masterclass on Eddie Howe, but like, we're talking about Sunderland's manager, Register Briss, is it?
Yeah.
We're talking about David Moyes. We're talking about Brentford's manager,
Keith Andrews.
who was Keith Andrews, who was a set piece coach last
Yeah.
season, for Thomas Frank, who's no longer in management because of Tottenham, and then obviously yesterday with Areola as well. So it just seems like a vicious cycle, and it is hard because at the end of the day with Eddie Howe, it's like it is going to be like shooting the dog that's too old. Like he's been a part of your life and it's so good, but like it's to a point of like is the dog struggling and you have to be like, what you're gonna do? Like, can Eddie Howe turn it around? I'm starting to really not think he can, because I've seen the end of this story a lot of times. It is difficult. I just don't think he's gonna change anything change anything of sort to turn it into the team that was a couple of seasons ago. Like, if you look at the team for the 22-23 season, that conceded who had the meanest defence in the
Yeah.
league and were qualified for the Champions League, we made the Carabao Cup final. We lost like four, 5, 6 games in the season. Excuse me. And you compare that to today's Eddie Howe's team, and there's just so many differences. And even though Eddie since that point has had several 100 million to spend on players, that 22-23 team would walk all over this current Newcastle team, and it wouldn't be close.
Agreed.
Like, it wouldn't be close at all. Because that Eddie Howe team would press were high and they'd absolutely just batter off the park. It would be a 3-4-0 job. Like, it'd be absolutely thingy. And one thing like Bournemouth did yesterday that we used to do was the shithousing, like
Yeah.
playing the referee and
Yes.
trying to run down the clock. Like, yesterday was a perfect away performance for Bournemouth yesterday. And like, if Newcastle went in the direction of, say, a new manager or whatever, with Areola leaving Bournemouth at the end of the season, they wouldn't go far wrong with going with Areola as a new manager. And whether the club do that or not, it remains to be seen. But yeah, like, fundamentally, like, Bournemouth just got it bang on yesterday, and like you mentioned, we made a good start to the game. They made a couple of tactical changes within the first 10 minutes, and then we had nothing for them. We didn't lay a glove on them. We didn't show any proactivity. And then when we go 2-1 down, the inevitable, oh well, he's going to bring a strike. He's going to bring Walter Marder on now because it's panic mode. Lo and behold, there's Walter Marder. People were chanting in the stands. It's 75 minutes for Walter Morata to come on, because he could have been the difference up front with Asula, just being a little bit of movement and focusing their centre halves on Walter Morata as well as Asula, and Asula could get in behind, because Asula was working really hard, and fans could see this in the stands, and nothing, and then Tino goes off injured, so he brings on Dan Burn, um, and no Walter Morata, and then Walter Morata comes on when we're 2-1 down. It's too late. Like, it's and the same happened last week with Alanga and Wissa coming on when Mateta scored the penalty. It's just like not being proactive and being very reactive to the thing, and I think that's been Eddie's undoing this season, where we've been just too reactive and not trying to force the issue. It's just very, when the issue is very much there, and trying to
Yeah.
react to the issue in hand. And it's been a tough season, and like I say, whatever the club what direction the club go with is a big one, because it comes down to the big summer again. But if they were to go with one of the options I've mentioned and move on from Eddie Howe, Areola wouldn't be a bad shout, because away from home would be kind of like Bournemouth were yesterday,
Yep.
very tough to beat and very resolute, and playing the shithouse tactics, which we need to see more away from home, and then playing some good football as well, and having a direct game plan which is
Yep.
going to work, and be good on the counter attack, and be having a plan to get in behind and fixing a lot of these issues, which at the minute I just don't feel like there's enough of in the grand scheme of things. Because looking at the home form, barring Man United, which was an absolute fluke of Asula brilliance, from that being a hard fought draw with 10 men. Like the home form's been absolutely shocking. And yeah, it's hard to say like with Eddie Howe, because at the end of the day, like he's done something a lot of great managers at this club haven't done, and won a trophy. But the club need to make a decision based on whether Eddie Howe's the right man for the job, and not use the Carabao Cup as kind of a way of like powering out of that. Like, yes, he did win World Cup, but is he the right man now? Not last year in March, now. So the club have got a big decision to make. And I hope it's the right one to make, mate, because if they don't, we could beat Tottenham next season. And literally, when they were winning 2-1, I was like, could they go on a run and catch we and we end up in the fight? Because if we do end up in the fight, that performance yesterday tells me that a lot of these players are looking at moves anyway. So if we're in the championship and we're not, or not, it doesn't matter half of them, because they're going to be fucking off anyway.
Yeah.
So
Again, the Spurs syndrome.
So yeah, so I don't want us to repeat what Spurs have done. I'd rather we did what Man United have done, and they're sitting third in the Premier League now. They made changes, they made some good signings, and they managed to get back up to the top end of the league. So we need to look at Man United now as a guide as to how to approach next season.
The strangest part about that to me is, if we do decide that it is time for a new manager, I think I would put a lot of money on Eddie Howe becoming the new Man United boss in the summer. I don't think they are going to give it to Carrick full time. I don't think he's done enough to be given it, because I think what Carrick has done can come down to letting the players enjoy training again, letting the players play in their natural position, and giving the players freedom on the pitch. That's what Michael Carrick has done. So that's not an elite coach's job or by any means, but he has done a fantastic job, don't get me wrong. But I do think Man United will be looking for a new permanent manager, and we all know Jim Ratcliffe and such are massive fans of Eddie Howe's. They want a British manager in the first place, but Eddie Howe is by far and away the best English coach out there. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Eddie going to Manchester United over the summer, which is something we also have to deal with, because then it will feel weird to think we've upgraded on Eddie Howe, but then to see Eddie Howe also within quotation marks upgrade on us. So that is a very, very strange situation, probably. Also, one other thing I did want to mention, the mentality issue you addressed, I could not agree more. Literally, I haven't had an opportunity to say this on the pod, because right before the international break I was on vacation. But in the derby, to only have one yellow card, which was picked up by Joe Linton for dissent, is disgraceful. Is honestly the worst stat I have seen all year for Newcastle United. And genuinely, the thing about that entire derby performance that made me the angriest out of them all. That is a clear mentality issue. If you can't bring yourself in one of the biggest derbies in Britain to commit enough to maybe pick up 1 or 2 yellow cards as a squad, then you don't have your priorities straight. That's it for me. The one thing I did still want to talk to you about, so you mentioned it, there is a possibility of us moving on from Eddie Howe. Iraola is one of the names mentioned. Is there anybody else you'd be interested in seeing become the Newcastle United manager?
I think you make a really good point in that I have seen a lot of calls on social media for Jose Mourinho to come in. I think that would be the worst appointment Newcastle probably could make, and I think there's a lot of feeling of like, oh well, Mourinho should come in because of his connections to Bobby Robson and stuff like that. And I'm all for a great story and stuff like that, mate. But I just don't think tactically it fits. Like, if people think we're bad now, like under Mourinho will
Yeah.
crumble
If
really
if
badly.
if you want some
Um,
some Portuguese league context to go along with that, Benfica are set in third behind Sporting Lisbon and Porto, despite being unbeaten this season. So think about how many draws that is.
yeah, I mean, if anything, they'll be harder to beat. Newcastle under Mourinho, but
Mhm.
like I think you've got to stick with the attacking minded manager.
Yeah.
And I think if they want a safe option, if you will, like I think Areola or Oliver Glasner would be two
Mhm.
good choices because
Agreed.
Areola would give you kind of what you seen yesterday in terms of being harder to beat, having exciting wingers, being able to run at defenders, and having that hard work and ethic in the midfield, which fits us quite well. So I think it would be a good fit, and not like fundamentally change everything about what Eddie Howe's done, but just add on to what Eddie Howe's built. With Areola, and I think that will be a safe option to go with.
Do you feel the same way
Um,
about Marco Silva at Fulham? Because he's one of he's also in that kind of bracket, and he will also be leaving Fulham in the summer.
I think there's better options out
Mm.
there, in all
Okay.
honesty, mate.
Mm.
I think the Areola Glasner would change with a back five, but I think if they kept Hall and Tino, you'd probably see the best of Lewis Hall
Yeah.
in
I
that
mean,
kind of formation. So
Glasner has played it back four. It's mostly his principles that do stay the same. So if I mean, we will be exposed in the same way that you are trying to allude to now, because he would probably still be playing with bombing fullbacks and overloading the middle of the park, but just with a back four instead of a back five. If we don't sign more than two center backs, that is, because we just don't have the personnel to play a back five
yeah,
right now. But I do
yeah,
agree
I
with you.
totally,
Yeah.
yeah, like, and there's one of them, and then there's for me, probably one for Enzo Maresca as well, because
Hmm.
I feel like in the circus that is Chelsea, he managed to get them playing quite well. Um, so there is going a bit left field. He won trophies at Chelsea as well, despite
Hmm.
everything that goes on
And
there.
he's a
So for
disciple of
me,
Pep Guardiola.
yeah, so there is a chance that they could go for someone like that as well, but it would be one of those three names in the Premier League. If they were gonna go a bit left field though, I would probably go for Stuttgart's manager because he's
Hmm.
done quite well over there. He won the German Cup last year,
Yep.
and he managed to get good out of Walter Marder and stuff as well. So, like a technical coach that way. But I wouldn't have a list too far, like have 8 to 10 names and stuff. I would kind of like I'd want to build on what Eddie has at the club and try and stick to the same
Hmm.
kind of style. Um, but yeah, I think you need to either go for Maresca, Areola, Oliver Glasner or Sebastian Honeb at Stuttgart, but they'd be my four names
Hmm.
that Newcastle should be looking at because I think one of them would look at Newcastle's project as quite exciting and then go from there. And I think all four of them would be able to build on what Eddie's got because I know this season's been bad, but Eddie has done a lot of good in terms of players being drilled a certain way and stuff. But I think if they're shown slightly a slightly different way, but the same kind of hard work and principles that Eddie's put into the squad, there is a good bounce that could come off that. So, so yeah, there is a few names out there that you could look at and go from there. But Jose Mourinho wouldn't be on that list at all.
I completely agree with you. Those are some interesting names as well for us to consider. I would probably be really happy with all of them. Oli Glasner, I think he's left Palace in a bit of a sour note this season, despite what could have been one of their probably most historic seasons of all time, given the fact that they are still in Europe in their first ever season in Europe. So that is a bit of a strange situation. Maybe if he doesn't get the transfers he desires when he's Newcastle boss, he could kick up the same kind of stink. That's my only caveat with him. And the one manager I would like to add to that list would be Vincenzo Italiano at Bologna. He has had a history now in the Serie A of punching above his weight, especially when you look at his financial means and the players he's had at his disposal and what he's achieved with those players. He's won Bologna their first Italian Cup in, I think, 50 or 40 years. He has had Bologna playing Champions League. They play a really attacking way of football, which is real nice to see as well. They also have some older heads, but that's pretty standard in the Serie A. But one thing I do find really interesting with him is that with Fiorentina, this is the first ever time Fiorentina aren't in a UEFA Conference League semi-final. The first time ever they aren't there. So that is a really, really surprising achievement. And this is the first season he isn't the Fiorentina manager. So they fell out of Europe faster than any season before, but also until about a month ago, they were actually fighting relegation. So the fact that Vincenzo Italiano got them with pretty much the same players in the Conference League every single year, reaching the final 3 seasons in a row, admittedly, yes, without winning it, but he's now won an Italian Cup with Bologna, so he can get over the line with a better team. But Bologna is also a club which is trying to break into that elite section of the established clubs in Italy. Yeah. That's where we are in England as well. So that's why I would add Vincenzo Italiano to that list. I think he's ready for the step up. And if it's not to us, he'll probably go to like Napoli to replace Conte or something. So those managers are for me the ones I would really be interested in. The one question I would like to end on, and it's probably a bit more of a fun question because I think I already know your answer to this, but what would you say to a straight swap between Eddie Howe and Michael Carrick?
I don't know, mate. Like, I think that would be a really... I don't know, like, because... Yeah, I don't think that would be
He has done well on T-side, to be fair.
I don't think that would be as written in the stars as what people think. Maybe I think Carrick's been kind of lucky that Man United did recruit well because they've got like Mbuemo, they've got Sesko, they've got Cunha, like exciting players. If you put them in a standard 4-2-3-1 and get them attacking, they're going to get you goals and stuff. And I think it'd be more of a tactical test if he came to Newcastle in the first couple of months in particular.
Absolutely.
So I think there is names there that I would prefer. But I mean I think Carrick's gonna be okay, but I don't think he'll be in Newcastle like.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. He could probably do with a kind of Frank Lampard-esque move to a team and get them promoted. Yeah. I mean, he got really close with Borough, but now even with Kim Helberg, I think their manager is now, you see that Middlesbrough just are allergic to getting promoted because they've bottled it yet again this season. Might even bottle the playoffs at this point, which would be astronomically funny. So, yeah, go down with someone like who's going down and sacking their manager this season. Carrick to Spurs, anyone?
If Spurs go down and he does get sacked, I think Carrick will go to Tottenham.
I think that would actually be a pretty good move for them.
Yeah, right. I've spoke about that with people I know as well. Like that, if De Zerbi isn't there, then I think Carrick will be. If Man United don't take him on.
This is probably for a different podcast, but other managers Spurs could be looking at the Belgian coach who is absolutely ripping it up with Norwich, Philippe Clement. He's brought them from I think 22nd to 8th in about 20 games, which is really impressive. If the season was 5 games longer there, maybe they could have gotten the playoffs, but they are definitely one of the favorites for promotion next season, in my opinion. And I think we're going to hear some more in the future on the name Philippe Clement, because I was already pretty impressed with him when he was Club Brugge and Monaco and even Rangers boss. So, all right. Is there anything else you'd like to add on the Bournemouth results, our transfer plans, or the manager situation?
Obviously just with the manager situation, like obviously, like I know we've mentioned names and stuff like that, but in that hat as well probably will be Eddie Howe and what he's managed to accomplish at Newcastle. I know it's been a rough season, but it is all up in the air for me. Like whether you Eddie in or Eddie out, it is something to take into consideration of what he has achieved at Newcastle. It has been a really bad season, and if there is a change, not particularly against it, because I feel like there is a feeling that it might have run its course, and all good things must come to an end, right? So yeah, I feel like there is consideration with Eddie Howe, but like I've mentioned in the podcast, if they are keeping Eddie Howe, fundamental things need to change around him, um, like the profile stuff we've discussed, and like the um tactical stuff that we've discussed as well. So yeah, I think there's a lot for people to take in there, and a lot to chew on and stuff. So hopefully the club make, regardless of what we think and stuff, the right decision.
Spot on, mate. Alright, I think that's where we are going to leave it for today. Please make sure to let us know in the comment section below where you fall on Eddie Howe. Are you Eddie in? Are you Eddie out? What do you think is the most important thing for us to do this summer? Please make sure to let us know in the comment section below. And we would really like to thank you for watching or listening on whatever app you use to listen to your podcasts. If you did listen to this on Spotify, please make sure to give us a 5-star review. If you listen to this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Head on over to our other social media pages, Magpie247 and Magpie247 Ultras on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You know the drill. And we would like to see you in the next episode. Have a good one.